What's up, everyone? According to consumeraffairs.com, 78% of Americans expect a housing market crash, and 63% of them actually want a housing market crash. 80% want a housing market correction. So let's take a look at the consumeraffairs.com article and see who exactly wants a housing market crash, who wants a correction, when they think the market is going to crash, and where they think is going to crash the most. And then we'll take a look at the latest data on the housing market provided by Redfin to see what the market indicators are saying and what's happening now and what's going to happen in the immediate future. So let's just dive right in. First, let's define a crash versus a correction. A housing crash is a sudden and steep decline in home values, often leading to economic ruin for many homeowners. A housing correction, on the other hand, is a slow and steady return of elevated home values back down to balanced levels. So 78% of Americans are expecting a crash, and 63% of them actually want it. Maybe that's because they found out in this survey that 75% of Americans plan to buy a home if the market crashes. They even got more specific and said that Gen Z are people that are born between 1997 and 2012, that they are the ones that are most eager for the housing market to crash, hoping that will help them buy their first home. But despite their hopes for a cooler market, Consumer Affairs reports that they actually may not be able to afford to buy a new home. They actually have the least saved to buy a home, which averages about $16,000 according to this report. Their smaller savings could have to do with their age, they just have less time to save, or it could have to do with them paying higher rents over the last few years. So if you're watching this and you are Gen Z, do you concur? Do you actually want the housing market to crash? In fact, I want to know what everybody thinks. Do you actually want the market to crash, or do you prefer a correction? Comment below. If a crash were to happen, where do people think it would hit first? Well, let's take a look at the survey and see what they said. In the last few years, many people started to work from home, so they actually moved out from this city to get a bigger home a little further away. And with low interest rates and some stimulus money from the government, it actually allowed them to relocate. But with low inventory and more buyers, this is when prices started to go up with all the bidding wars until they reached all-time highs. So now with interest rates rising, most people in this survey believe that the metropolitan areas are going to be hit first and hardest if the market continues to slow down. They ranked the top 50 most populated cities in order of which ones they thought would crash first. So let's take a look at their top 10 urban housing markets that are expected to crash first. Austin, Texas appears at the most risk. 33% of people singled out this market as the most precarious. Austin was followed by Atlanta, Georgia at 26%, Bakersfield, California, 24%, Los Angeles, California, 23%, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 23%, Las Vegas, Nevada, 19%, Baltimore, Maryland, 18%, New York, 17%, and Long Beach, California, and San Francisco, California, both at 15%. Do any of you live in any of these cities? Some of them on the top 10 kind of surprise me, like Baltimore, to be honest. But I'm just curious, where do you live, and do you see the crash already happening if you're in one of these top 10 cities? The next big question is, when do people see these markets crashing? Of those expecting a crash, 36% expect it this year, 49% next year, and 7% in 2024 or 2025. More than half of the baby boomers, and those are people born between 1946 and 1964, believe that 2023 will bring a housing crisis. Next, they asked the respondents if they would need to sell their homes in the event of a recession, and if so, what their next steps would be. If the country does go into a recession, many people who bought homes in the last few years may want to sell. So let's see what they said. Nearly 2/3 surveyed said they would need to sell their home if a recession hit. This scenario was equally likely among both Gen Zers and baby boomers, with both generations saying they would most likely have to sell. This actually made me really sad. When surveyed, they said that over 82% of the people believe that if the housing market crashes, they'll end up owing more on their mortgage than the house is worth. This is what happened in 2008 when people were just underwater and they had to do short sales. So I really hope that that doesn't happen. And if they do have to sell, 79% of them said they would rather downsize than rent, which I find really interesting. The only good news about this whole scenario is that if the market does continue to cool down, there will be more inventory. So if people do need to downsize and they still want to own a home, hopefully they'll have more options to choose from. Take a look at this map they provided that shows the percentage of people that would need to sell their home if the housing market does crash. They did the map by region. They have 48% in the West, 71% in the Midwest, 58% in the South, and 75% in the Northeast. That's a lot of people that would have to sell their homes if this survey is correct. But when they asked if you had to sell, would you go back to renting or would you downsize? They clearly said that 79% would consider downsizing, while 21% would go back to renting. Next, they looked at renters who have had a really tough time of it in the last couple years with rents going up year over year. So they asked them, if the housing market doesn't crash, will they still be able to buy a home in the next year? 48% of them said yes, and 52% of them said no. So they went on to ask if the housing market does crash, do they think that rent increases will start to slow down? 72% said yes, and 28% said no. So I have to say, just looking at this survey as a whole, it seems like a lot of Americans really have a very negative outlook on what's happening. And I understand why they do. It's pretty obvious what's happening in our country. But I want to know where you land. Do you land on wanting a housing market crash, or do you want more of a correction? And what do you think will happen regardless of what you want? And just to let you know how they conducted this survey, Consumer Affairs surveyed 1,003 individuals to explore perceptions about a potential housing crisis. Of these respondents, 502 were homeowners that had purchased their home in the last 2 years, and 501 were renters. I'll put the link below so you can read more about this survey, but for now, let's move on to some real data from the latest Redfin housing report. This latest housing market update report from Redfin was published August 11th. Newly listed homes fall most since 2020 as sellers pull back. In this update, Redfin reports that new listings of homes for sale dropped 12% year over year for the week ending August 7th, the steepest decline since June of 2020. Well, this makes sense because there are less buyers due to higher mortgage interest rates. And the homeowners that already live in their homes, they're not going to trade in their low interest rates for a higher one, so they're staying put. Pending home sales are down 16% from a year ago. Active listings of homes for sale are up almost 4% from a year ago. Despite the decrease in new listings, overall housing supply continues to grow, a sign that home buyers are pulling back more than home sellers. The total number of homes for sale is up around 4% from a year ago. This is good news for buyers who can still be in the market because they'll just have more inventory to choose from. Redfin Deputy Chief Economist Taylor Marr said, "Buyers are backing off due to rising housing costs and sellers are holding back because they realize they won't get the bidding war they would have gotten 6 months ago. The good news is this is bringing balance back to the market. If mortgage rates resume their downward trajectory, more buyers and sellers could get back in the game." Let's take a quick look at some of the other housing market indicators. For the week ending August 11th, 30-year mortgage rates rose to 5.22%. This was down from a high of 5.81%, but up from a 3.11% from the beginning of the year. Fewer people searched for homes for sale on Google. Searches during the week of August 6th were down 23% from a year ago, but up 12% from late May. The median home sale price was $379,089, up 8% year over year. Prices have declined 4.1% from a record high of $395,500, hit during the 4-week period ending June 19th. On average, 7.8% of the homes for sale had a price drop each week, a record high. More price drops than any other time since 2015. Homes that sold were on the market for a median of 22 days, up from 20 days a year earlier, and the record low of 16 days that was in May and the beginning of June. So this data shows us the continuing slowing down of the market because we're definitely seeing a correction everywhere and some places more severe than others. But the survey really surprises me. Does it surprise you that so many people actually want a housing crash? I mean, I think it would be really, really sad. I don't want that at all. I think a correction is in order. The housing market was not sustainable, which I've said in many of my videos. But a crash to see people out of their homes, I don't want that. Do you? Put your comments below. Let's start the conversation. And if you are getting some value out of these housing market videos, because they are a lot of work, please show your appreciation by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It just motivates us to make more videos. I really try to bring you the most up-to-date information so you can make the best decisions for you and your family. Check out other housing market updates. Definitely check out these 2 videos. They all come from different sources, so it'll give you a good idea of what's happening and what the industry insiders are saying. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Bye.